Imagine stumbling upon an ancient book, its pages yellowed with age, its leather binding cracked and worn. You open it, eager to delve into its secrets, only to find that the most crucial pages are missing, torn out, leaving gaping holes where once there were vivid images and poetic line. This is the fate of the manuscript known as B.M. Dijon 525, a codex that once held the complete text of Le Roman de la Rose, one of the most influential works of medieval literature. The mutilation of this manuscript is not just a loss of physical pages, it is a wound that disrupts the very essence of the poem, a wound that speaks of the power and the danger of the images and words it once contained. Le Roman de la Rose begins with a dream. The poet Guillaume de Loris describes his journey into a garden, a place of beauty and temptation, surrounded by a high, crenellated wall. This wall is not just a physical barrier. It is a canvas covered with rich murals and intricate paintings. Guillaume tells us that he eagerly contemplated these images and wall paintings, and he vows to describe them for us, recounting their appearance exactly as I remember them. The images he sees are not just decorations. They are a key to understanding the world he is about to enter, a world where sight and insight are inextricably linked. Guillaume introduces us to the lover and the narrative with a poetic tour de force that spans 6 pages, or 337 lines, in the critical edition by Langlois. He uses a rhetorical device known as hypotyposis, or graphic description, to paint a vivid picture of the garden and its wall. This technique, a form of ekphrasis, charges the images with a powerful force, making them come alive in the reader's mind. The wall is not just a wall. It is a living, breathing entity, a mirror of the poet's vision. The images on the wall are not random. They are portraits of courtly vices, personified as characters who embody the very behaviors that are unwelcome in the Garden of Delight. Poverty, jealousy, melancholy, old age, hypocrisy, and others are depicted in minute detail, their emblems and attributes telling the story of what lies beyond the garden's gates. These images serve as a warning, a guide for the lover, and a lesson for the reader. But in the mutilated manuscript of B.M. Dijon 525, these images are gone. The pages that once held the paintings are now blank. The text that described them is incomplete. The absence of these images is more than just a loss of visual beauty. It is a disruption of the poem's narrative and a challenge to the reader's understanding. The empty spaces on the page, the holes left by the missing images, create a sense of tension and loss, a reminder of the power of the images to shape our perception of the text. The Dijon manuscript is not just a single work. It is a collection of texts, a miscellany that includes Le Roman de la Rose and other works that respond to it. These texts form a dialogue, a debate about the themes and ideas presented in the Rose. Some of these works, like L'Espèce des Femmes and Le Roman de Fauvel, offer a moral critique of the Rose, challenging its portrayal of courtly love and the vices that accompany it. Le Roman de Fauvel, in particular, is a scathing satire of the courtly world. Fauvel, a horse that represents the vices and hypocrisies of the court, is a central figure in this work. Unlike the Rose, which places the vices on the margins of the garden, Fauvel puts them at the center, exposing the corruption and deceit that lie beneath the surface of courtly life. The images in Fauvel are not just decorative. They are a powerful critique of the very world that the Rose seeks to idealize. The mutilation of the Dijon manuscript, then, is not just an act of vandalism. It is a symbolic act that reflects the tension between the idealized world of the Rose and the harsh realities it seeks to conceal. The missing images and the fragmented text remind us that the Garden of Vices is not a place we can easily escape. The vices that Guillaume sought to exclude from his garden are, in fact, an integral part of the human experience, and they continue to shape our perceptions and our actions. As you read the remaining pages of this manuscript, you will encounter a world where the boundaries between text and image, between ideal and reality, are constantly blurred. The mutilated pages of B.M. Dijon 525 are a testament to the power of Le Roman de la Rose, and the enduring debate it has inspired. The absence of the images is a call to look deeper, to see beyond the surface, and to engage with the complex and often contradictory nature of human desire and morality. On a cold winter day in 1372, King Charles V of France made a surprising decision. Instead of appointing a new Chancellor of France as the kings usually did, he called a meeting of his council, which included churchmen, nobles, and commoners. They gathered at his residence, the Hotel St. Paul, to elect the new chancellor. This was a significant departure from tradition, as the chancellorship was a crucial administrative post typically reserved for aristocrats. The previous chancellor, Cardinal Jean de Dormans, who was also the Bishop of Beauvais, had resigned. The council elected his brother, Guillaume de Dormans, to take over the position. However, the real shock came the following year, when Guillaume suddenly died. Once again, Charles V convened his council, but this time he chose a commoner, Pierre d'Orgemont, for the job. This was an even more unconventional move, as it broke another long-standing tradition. The election process was detailed and formal. Each council member had to swear an oath on the Holy Scriptures to elect the most competent person they knew, regardless of their background. Nicolas de Villemer, the clerk of the Parliament, recorded the proceedings. After the votes were tallied, it was announced that Pierre d'Orgemont, a former president of Parliament, had been elected by a majority of 105 out of 130 electors. Pierre humbly tried to decline the position, expressing doubts about his competence, but King Charles was confident in his abilities and appointed him as the new chancellor, giving him the seals of France. This change in the selection process for the chancellorship reflected Charles V's efforts to modernize and rationalize governance. He and his advisors, particularly the philosopher Nicole Oresme, drew on the political theories of Aristotle. For Charles, Aristotle's ideas offered a practical model of governance based on the natural world, and the belief that the state should aim to ensure a good life for its citizens. This model emphasized the importance of a diverse population and a centralized city for effective governance. In 1370, Paris was a bustling city with a population of about 300,000 people, making it the largest city in the Western world at the time. The city was divided into three main sectors: the merchant and artisan class, who drove the economy; the ecclesiastical domain, which included numerous religious institutions and the university; and the royal court, with its princes, nobles, and government officials. Governing this complex and diverse city required a new approach to leadership, one that Charles V sought to implement through his innovative methods. The growth of Paris and the expansion of the royal court in the 14th century were closely intertwined. King Charles V's decision to involve his royal council in the election of high administrative officials reflects his commitment to organizing the administration based on rational and inclusive principles. This is evident in the election of Guillaume de Dormans as Chancellor of France in 1372, and the even more radical appointment of Pierre d'Orgemont, a commoner, as Chancellor in 1373. These appointments were not just about filling positions, but were part of a broader reform agenda inspired by Aristotelian political theory. Aristotle's definition of the state polis as a composite of citizens who participate in judicial and administrative functions was a key influence. He argued that a good citizen must have the ability to both rule and be ruled, and that virtue erit and wisdom phronsis are essential qualities for both rulers and citizens. Aristotle believed that a state must focus on virtue to achieve its goal of bringing about a good life for its citizens. For Charles V, this meant that the Chancellor of France should be a suffisante person, a capable person who embodies these virtues. Aristotle also emphasized the importance of meritocracy in political office. He argued that those who contribute most to the state, not just in terms of wealth or birth, but in terms of civic virtue, should have a larger role in governance. This philosophy provides a clear rationale for the appointment of Pierre d'Orgemont, a commoner, as chancellor. It was not a move to undermine the king's authority, but to strengthen it by ensuring that the most capable individuals were in key positions. Moreover, Aristotle believed that citizen participation in the state's activities was essential. He reasoned that when citizens engage in communal tasks, they develop a sense of responsibility to the community. This participation could take many forms, including the election of officials. While individual citizens might not have the expertise to rule, collectively they could make wise decisions. This idea of collective wisdom was a pragmatic approach to governance that Charles V adopted. The reforms Charles V implemented were deeply influenced by Aristotle's works, which he had translated and commented on by Nicole Oresme. Oresme's translations and glosses were not just literal renditions. They adapted Aristotle's ideas to the context of 14th century France. Oresme's glosses, for example, explained how the principles of good governance could be applied to the challenges of the time, such as the burdens of taxation and social unrest. Oresme's work also had a significant impact on the French language. He introduced a wealth of philosophical and technical terms that were previously only available in Latin, enriching the vernacular. His translations and glosses were not only accurate, but also thoughtful, often recasting Aristotle's points to align with Charles V's political goals. For instance, Oresme's glosses on the concept of citizenship and the state reflect a model where citizens have the right to participate in governance, a shift from the traditional hierarchical model of medieval monarchy. In Oresme's interpretation, a citizen-citoyen is a partner in the community site, with the right to aspire to and participate in public offices. This model still contained hierarchies, but it envisioned a more inclusive form of governance where citizens could contribute to the state based on their abilities and virtues. This approach was a significant departure from the divinely ordained hierarchy of medieval monarchy, where the king's authority was seen as absolute and derived from God. Through his translations and glosses, Oresme helped Charles V implement reforms that were grounded in rational and ethical principles, ensuring that the state could function efficiently and justly. These reforms not only strengthened the king's authority, but also laid the foundation for a more participatory and virtuous form of governance. In the 14th century, the way people thought about citizenship and governance was undergoing a significant shift, particularly in France. Nicole Oresme, a prominent scholar and advisor to King Charles V, played a crucial role in this transformation. Unlike the traditional view that citizenship was primarily a matter of birth and privilege, Oresme introduced a new concept, citizenship as a right that came with responsibilities. According to Oresme, being a citizen wasn't just about having the right lineage or wealth. It required active participation in the governance of the city or state. This participation, or participation de fait, meant that individuals had to contribute to the well-being of the community in some meaningful way. For Oresme, a citizen was someone who helped ensure that the city fulfilled its purpose, which, following Aristotle, was to benefit the entire population. Aristotle had emphasized that a good citizen must be virtuous. For him, virtue wasn't just a matter of personal morality, but a practical ability to contribute to the community. Oresme expanded on this idea, suggesting that citizens could take on various roles, such as judges, rulers, or counselors. These roles were not limited to the nobility. Anyone with the necessary skills and willingness to serve could be a citizen. Oresme's view was revolutionary because it opened up the idea of citizenship to a broader range of people, including the bourgeoisie. One of the most significant examples of Oresme's influence on Charles V's policies was the way the king chose his officials. In 1372 and 1373, Charles V held elections to fill the position of Chancellor of France. Instead of appointing someone based solely on birth or favor, he allowed the royal council to elect the chancellor. Even more groundbreaking, in 1373, Charles nominated a bourgeois candidate, Pierre, for the position. This move was a clear departure from the traditional practice, and demonstrated Charles's commitment to Oresme's ideas about governance. Oresme's ideas were not just theoretical, they were deeply rooted in the cultural and intellectual changes of the time. The Royal Library, which Charles V founded, played a crucial role in this transformation. The library was more than just a collection of books. It was a center of knowledge and learning. Charles commissioned translations of important works, including those by Aristotle, into French, making them accessible to a wider audience. These translations were not just literal. They included glosses and interpretations that made the ancient wisdom relevant to contemporary French society. The library was located in the Louvre, close to the king's private quarters, making it easy for the king and his advisors to access these works. The idea was that by studying these books, the king and his court could make more informed and just decisions. The library became a symbol of the new emphasis on knowledge and learning, which Oresme believed was essential for good governance. Oresme also argued that the best rulers and advisors were those who had studied political science. He pointed to historical examples, such as the Greeks and Romans, who had maintained strong and enduring governments by studying and applying the principles of political science. For Oresme, the study of books was not just about acquiring knowledge, but about putting that knowledge into action. The goal was to create a society where citizens, regardless of their background, could contribute to the common good. This new approach to governance and citizenship marked a significant shift from the older, more hierarchical and privilege-based system. It was a move towards a more inclusive and merit-based society, where knowledge and active participation were valued over birth and wealth. This shift was not just a change in theory. It was a practical approach that Charles V implemented through his policies and the establishment of the Royal Library. The result was a court and a kingdom that were more informed, more just, and more engaged in the well-being of all its citizens. King Charles V of France was no mere collector of books. He was a visionary ruler who saw in his library the means to shape a better world. He believed that the wisdom contained in the pages of ancient and contemporary works could guide the governance of his kingdom and the lives of his people. Charles commissioned translations into French of essential texts, making them accessible to his court and the broader public. By doing so, he transformed his library into a living, breathing institution that fostered a culture of learning and moral excellence. One of the most significant examples of Charles's commitment to knowledge and its application was his commissioning of Raoul de Perslez to translate St. Augustine's De Civitate Dei, City of God, in 1371. Charles justified this endeavor as being for the good of the public, of the kingdom, and of all Christendom. Similarly, in 1374, he rewarded Nicole Oresme with 200 gold francs for translating Aristotle's Politics and Economics, recognizing the value of these works in shaping a just and orderly society. Charles's personal connection to his books was profound. In 1372, he inscribed a message in a codex, declaring it his own and noting that he had it copied and completed. This act was more than a simple ownership claim. It was a declaration of his identity as a king who valued knowledge and its practical application. The library was not just a collection of books, but a symbol of Charles's vision for a well-governed state. He drew inspiration from Aristotle's political theories, which emphasized the importance of citizen participation in governance. Nicole Oresme, in his translation of Aristotle's Politics, captured the essence of this philosophy, stating that politics is the art of ensuring public welfare through prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Oresme's glosses, influenced by radical texts like Marsilius of Padua's Defensor Passus, advocated for broader participation in the lawmaking process, suggesting that laws should be made, revised, and enforced with the consent of the community. Charles's library was a hub of intellectual activity, a place where knowledge was not only stored but also shared and discussed. It served as a meeting ground for scholars and courtiers, fostering a culture of learning and debate. The library's collection, organized according to specific principles, preserved and promoted the wisdom of the past, making it available for the betterment of the present. Charles's choice of Gilles Mallet as his royal librarian was a testament to his commitment to these ideals. Mallet, a trusted valet de chambre, shared Charles's love for books and learning. Christine de Pizan, an avid patron of the library, praised both Charles and Mallet for their moral and intellectual virtues. She recounted a poignant story of Mallet's fortitude in the face of personal tragedy, highlighting his ability to maintain composure and continue his duties, which earned him the king's deep respect. Through the library and the people he surrounded himself with, Charles V sought to create a society where wisdom and virtue were not just abstract concepts, but living principles. The library became a symbol of his vision for a just and enlightened kingdom, a place where the potential for change was actualized through the power of knowledge and the moral strength of its leaders. In this way, Charles's library was not just a repository of books, but a catalyst for a cultural and political transformation that would influence the course of French history.